Hello, everybody. So, new podcast. As I'm working on the Strongfit seminar and the Strongfit system and the seminar coming up in LA on September 28th, 29th. And oh, by the way, I'm most likely going to have the seminar in London as well, and it would be October 19th, 20th. I'm working that. We're still working on it, but most likely it's going to happen. Let's put it this way, right? So, so we were talking with Mike, my partner from at Improve, about how we would develop the Strongfit system and how we would coach it and everything. And I want to explain a little bit of that because there's a deeper conversation to have about a very, very, very deep rabbit hole I want to explore today. So first, the idea would be what would be the seminar about? So the seminar, like CrossFit has level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. And so I was like, all right, so what do people need out of the Strongfit system? So my idea would be that, and by the way, if you have ideas, put it in the comments because I'm kind of curious to see how you guys see it. This is how we were seeing it with Mike, and I would love your opinion, is the seminar would be like a level 1 where we go over the 10 fundamental movements of Strongfit, the one we use. No, they won't be a barbell. And then we show the techniques, simple, low waist, and everything. We explain the workouts that we use, how we use those movements, in what format, why the format, below 5 minutes. So the introduction would be a lot about intensity, right? Really, the seminar would be the need for intensity, the need for an acute reaction. Explaining a little bit as to why, even from a biological perspective. I'm going to come back to that. Go through the movements, the workouts, right? Like obviously the Saturday afternoon is a burn the question, right? But basically the weekend over the workouts, the movement, the burn the question, the need for intensity. Obviously an overview of the principles, nothing too deep. And going over, if people want, for example, the stabilization effect that nutrition can have, but keep it really at a movement-based, workout-based, below 5 minutes. How do we use the system? How do we use that to get stronger? We can talk programming a little bit. So the idea really is that Monday you can start putting it into effect, right? Coaches Week would be where we go deep into the principles. That's where the pyramids, all that stuff comes in. I would touch it in the seminar, but it would be mostly for Coaches Week so that I can explain to coaches how to use the principles in their career for what they do at the gym. And then I think a level 3, so that'd be the mentoring program, would be application of all that into, for example, anxiety, things like that. So far more practical with the at the end of the mentoring program, a test toward the certification, and a level 4 where you go, basically you work with us directly, once we're done with UCLA, with the anxiety, the autism, and stuff like that. So that's a little bit my idea, is that the seminar will be very much movement focused. So the exercise we use, the openers, obviously, but really the workouts, they're like, Strongfit under 5 minutes, right? So a training system, in a way. And we can go deeper into the principles in the Coaches Week. Why am I saying that? For example, and that's what I wanted to touch about today. It's going to be a bit complex because there's a lot of stuff at once. But I wanted to talk about the idea of intent, right? Purpose, and why I keep saying that you have to become the person that squats 500 pounds and not just try to progress. There is a very deep idea there that I'm going to go into. So this is a massive rabbit hole, about as big as the free energy principle. Because it turns out that intent, purpose, has a biological reality, has a physical reality that is there. So
what do you mean by that?
Right, so it's complex. There's someone who's been challenging the Darwinian idea of evolution since in the last 50 years. Not to say that Darwinian evolution isn't correct. It's just there's certain added things that even Darwin offered at the end of his life that were brushed apart for two reasons. First of all, they thought it was anthropomorphy, in the sense of we were putting human quality into a system that is not human. And second of all, they were very hard trying to limit the influence of religion in science. And by doing so, they created their own religion where they negated very important part of science. And unfortunately, there's an anthropomorphism right there. Humans have a tendency to do that. In order to win arguments, they will oversimplify things, so it's called a strawman argument, in order to not give weapon to the other side. You have to understand that 1900 Victorian science is done many mistakes, but they were at the core, a lot of the mistakes were because they were a hardcore fight against religion, the church, and things like this. With science and the church have always been at odds because one challenges the other. The problem with that is the anthropomorphism was not to put intent in things. It was to think that intent is intelligence in a human form. That was the mistake. So instead of understanding that was the mistake, they put anthropomorphism where it didn't exist. What do I mean by that? So, for example, the Greeks, Plato and everything, had something called teleology, which is, he was offering that the difference between the seed for an apricot tree or the seed for an avocado tree is that their purpose is different. Their intent is different. Because if you look at a seed, how can a seed transform into a tree? And the idea was that, well, there is a purpose there to grow into a tree. And so that fundamentally Western science could not allow because you're starting to go into intent which gets you very close to God.
Yeah, I understand.
Right? Or at least you give weapons to those people to say, see, God exists. So they started to deny it. And what they did is they used, whenever the genome came out, the DNA, they used that saying, see, you're wrong. Everything starts at the building block of life, which is the genetic coding, and then things work out of that. So what they created at that moment is the Lego theory, which means you put small pieces together until you have a big whole.
Yeah.
So you start at genes and you work your way up. And for that, they started, by the way, that was in a way Darwinism, evolution through sexual competition and everything. But at the end, there was a guy before that called Lamarck who exposed other ideas saying that evolution has a purpose, moved into a certain way. Because the idea that selection, normal sexual competitiveness comes out of random things that evolve through competition into a dominant life form. And there are a number of issues with that. For example, it's like if that were true, nature is the luckiest thing that ever existed because you can look at what the probabilities of random are and it never fits evolution ever. You see the same bird showing up in the same island twice, right, over the side of 1,000, it got wiped out, start over again, ended up with the same bird. So randomness, we just take that out of the equations. You say, yeah, sexual, yeah. No, it doesn't. Basically, it's people that don't understand statistics. No, the evolution would have forced something different. What didn't change at the time was the environment. Anyway, so out of that comes, there's actually a very, very strong idea that came from a simple fact. Is like, if it were true that genes are the first block of the whole thing, that means that you change a gene, you change the entire system. And that's not what we see. First of all, we see viruses changing their genetic makeup based on what they need to do. And so that's actually supposed to be impossible. It's called the Westermann barrier or whatever, that says that one, like the microbes and everything, there's a barrier between the genetic level and let's say microbes and stuff like that, when you go higher in size, and one can only influence back down. And that's not true because we see all the time, for example, viruses changing their genetic structure or things like that. Plus, there's another issue, is we see organisms that will have, and we try that, it's been tested, where we take out an entire chunk of the DNA sequence of their genes, and nothing changes in the behavior of the thing, which is not possible, right? If you change the genes, then that means you change everything.
Yeah.
And we see it time and time again that it's not that. For example, like you see Down syndrome and stuff like that, certain genes, if you change them, the whole body changes. It's not true of 95% of genes in the body. only 5% will create something that cannot be changed, like Down syndrome. 95% of the time, the body can work around. And so it will change the genetic structure to keep the same purpose going. And that's been shown time and time and time again. So, for example, we're going to go back to the flatworm, right? You cut it, you get 2 flatworms, head and tail. I talked about that story many times, and Michael Levin did that. So what we saw is that you mess with the electrical currents, the voltage differential, and then you end up with a flatworm with a head and a head. So you remove the change, right? So you stop messing with electrical current, and then you cut the flatworm that has 2 heads in 2. Normally, since the genetic structure is the same as the first one, and you stop messing with the electrical current, naturally what you would get is a head and a tail. Right? Since that's what the genetic makeup is. The only reason you got 2 heads is because you mess with electrical current. So you basically deform the worm. So once you remove the cause of deformation, you go back to the original worm. That's the idea. If everything is based on genes. Okay, except that's not what we see. What we saw is that for 7 generations, we get a worm with 2 heads. But then by the 8th generation, it goes back to a head and a tail. So I always wonder, okay, but where that's intent? I mean, there's an intent to stay like that, there's an intent to change. And I was like, where is that intent located? Where is it stored? Because it's not in the genetic makeup. So where is it coming from? And then when and why does it know to change or not change? So it turns out, and that's, I think, a bit what Dennis Noble is trying to explain, is that what we change in the worm is the purpose of the worm.
Wow. But yeah.
So how do we change the purpose? So I would take you back to Michael Levin work on what he calls the intelligence of cells. He was saying that actually the bioelectricity, the current between the cells, is how the software gets carried on. The orders gets carried on. So that would mean that by messing the voltage differential, you changed the software. So you gave, got it. Push kiddos. You gave a new purpose to the world, right? You falsified. Let me rephrase. You falsified the purpose of the worm, which is why it stayed with 2 heads. It didn't matter what his genetic makeup was, he still ended up with 2 heads because that's what the purpose required. So even though the genetic material was for a head and a tail, the worm said it didn't matter and did whatever he wanted based on the purpose. What is the purpose? Solving the problem of the environment. That's what the software is for. So it seems like we have a supercomputer that constantly tries to solve the purpose of the problem of the environment, and that's your purpose.
So going back a little bit to the religion and science part,
right.
Can I then make the conclusion, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that science did go a certain way because they had to balance out, they had to get rid of the God part, the intent part, just because the Christianity or religion came in the way. So it went exactly the other way. So
make it its own,
make it its own religion. But it's good to have that context because then you can look at science a little bit more from that perspective,
and
right?
that's the anthropomorphism. So in the case of the world, right? So if you go like, okay, but there's an intent. If you're saying that purpose, so what it means is that purposely creates function.
Yeah. That you said to me the other day, and that really... So I still don't fully understand what that sentence means because it means so many things.
Right. But in that case, is that purpose solving the environment will make me create a new function out of the same set of genes. So it doesn't matter what my base is. I can change it based on what needs to be accomplished.
Based on your environment.
So there is no Lego theory. It's not a bunch of small blocks make a bigger block. As we say, the total is more than the sum of all parts. That's what it means. So now we are back to teleology, what Plato was pushing forward. The apricot tree has a purpose, to be an apricot tree. And it will change, regardless of what the base is, it will become that. So the problem with that was, and at the time that's what they didn't like, is that you introduce the idea of intelligent design, like of a greater intelligence doing that. And that's the problem, is that no, we don't know that. That's the anthropomorphism. Instead of going like there is a purpose, we don't fully understand it, but that doesn't mean there is no purpose. So instead, we looked at purpose and talked about intelligence, God. That's the anthropomorphism. The anthropomorphism was not to say systems have a purpose. The anthropomorphism was saying purpose means intelligence, and that can lead to God. That's the anthropomorphism. So to avoid that, they crank it one back, and when they say there cannot be purpose, they change the science in order to say, change the science. They made massive assumptions that they said were truth in order to keep things moving a certain way. Richard Dawkins is stuck on his way to do evolution because otherwise he makes his entire thing about atheism, and he would give weapons to his religious counterpart.
Yeah.
And by the way, I would disagree with a religious counterpart that if you talk about intent, you talk about God. That is not true. You talk about intent, that's all. That means that each system has its own intent. No, that does not link everything to God. It just links things to that system. So this has its own purpose. That is not yours. Because I solve the problem of the environment differently than you do. So outside of a very few set of genes that will actually lead me somewhere that I cannot change, the rest can evolve.
Wow.
We see generations of people, for example, in Japan, got taller in almost one generation, not two. And the whole nutrition thing, I don't think is enough. They were saying, yeah, but the pressure at the time. There was a number of things like that. That's where epigenetics comes in. It's far more important than we understand. Doesn't solve the problem where is an intent located, by the way. That we don't know. But at least I think we have a way to understand how it's being communicated through the software, through the work of Michael Lewin, who will get the Nobel Prize one day for that. You'll see. But anyway, the idea is that purpose creates function.
Yeah.
And that seems to be regardless of what the base is.
Well, and how interesting is that there's only 5% of your body that of your genes, that cannot be changed in that way. Yeah. The rest can be changed. So that idea that challenges the idea of like, who are you in a way? Because
and that's
it's really
problem.
You are really.
So you have to understand, at the time when Darwin, by the end, was trying to offer certain ideas, because, for example, life is cooperative before it is competitive in the way. So the way we explain evolution is like random stuff, but at the end, it's competition that leads to the dominant life form. If that were true, then we would never have gotten back off of bacteria, because then you end up with one strong bacteria that kills everything else. And that's not what we see when life is created. What do I mean by that? When you have an empty spot that is devoid of life, you see a massive expansion. In that massive expansion, there is no competition between everything else. There's only cooperation. You have a number of cells, for example, that grow extremely fast. They don't fight each other. They just keep filling in the niche. And very types of different, let's say like we have a biosphere or whatever, right? You'll see many different life forms that get there, different types of cells, different type of whatever, wherever you are, different type of entities. They don't fight each other. They actually grow with a massive diversity to fill that space, because we don't know yet what we need. Once the niche is filled, then we see the competitiveness starting to take place, because now that specialization comes in. It's called differentiation. We're going to differentiate in between the groups of, for example, cells in order to heal or things like that. And we're going to decide which one belong there and which one don't. The one that belong there will try to compete against each other so that the strongest ones win, so that space becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. The one that don't belong there get kicked out so that they can go and try to put their quality somewhere else. You can see that through cultures. You can see that through. So whether it's biology at the cell level or it's human cultures, it's the same thing. It's maybe a cell culture, human culture, they behave the same. First is cooperation, then is competition. Cooperation lasts until the niche is filled, and from there it moves to competition. And in the competition, the cells that are not perfectly suited for the environment get kicked out so they can start something somewhere else. And within that niche, competition, so that the strongest ones come up on top, making the whole system stronger. The purpose being to solve the environment. So you have two ways of solving, first through cooperation, then through competition. But so the idea that evolution is only competition is untrue. So at the time, Darwin, by the way, Lamarck said that. There were plenty of people saying it, even Darwin at the time. But then they backed off from that because they wanted only a moving forward only type of thing. And so I forget the name. It's a barrier between like the genetic, for example, level and then the microbes and everything. Wesselman barrier, Wessel barrier, you guys tell me, but I'll Google it after anyway. And they were saying it can never be crossed, and that's not true. We saw viruses changing their genetic makeup based on what is needed. They're even proposing the idea that a virus actually is a regression of life, that it was actually a life form that regressed to become just a virus, so that it's basically simple, small enough to go invest another life form. So it's a regression of a life form.
Wow.
Which means that would not be possible in that sense. So the point is, and that's simple. Anyway, so why does this matter? Because then, if this is true, right, and that's what the free energy principle, in a way also, it goes in the same direction, because the free energy principle is, it's the work of Schrödinger and what is life. The idea that life fights entropy. All right, fighting entropy means intent, means there's the purpose there. We go back to where's the purpose coming from? And again, so we go back to not having an answer. But the point is, life has a purpose, which is surviving. So it fights entropy, which is death, and then you have a start there, right? Where is it contained? All that stuff we don't know, but that would be the purpose of it. So that means that there is a biological reality to all that.
Yeah.
Wow. Like what is purpose? You see it. So there is an intent, no matter how low you go, even at the cell level, you see an intent there that will guide function, that will create function. Wow. Not the other way around. So it's not a Lego theory, it's function. Function is created by purpose, by intent. So the rabbit holes are endless.
I mean, that means so many things on so many different levels, because you can even apply that to your training. You can apply that to
right. So that was a bit the
everything.
point. So
that's the first thing I go to because of my monkey
yes.
brain. That
no. But let's take it to training, because then it means that, for example, you're at 400 pounds, or you weigh 50 pounds. You're 50 pounds overweight, or. It doesn't matter. What we need to change first is your purpose. Right? And how do we change the purpose? We modify the environment. So that means how we do that to lose weight. You don't train, we make you train. Once we make you train, we have modified your environment. Your body is going to have to solve that problem on a simple level, right? It's like, all right, so I move a lot. I need to lose the weight. So it's not, let's trigger this gene or this system that makes you burn more fat. No. We create an environment in which your body has only one chance to be able to live in the environment is by getting in shape, and then it follows.
Yeah, and that's going back to that. Actually, one of the first things you said is that you have to become the person that squats an X amount, let's say 500 pounds. You have to become the person who is 50 pounds less of your weight. Yes. You have to become that person, because there's a physiological need for that, right?
So, and there's a problem that we face, I think, today, especially with social media, is you want to go to the CrossFit Games. Why? Because you want to be a badass, right? So the purpose is being a badass.
Oh yeah, that's a very, very loose.
No, but that's a very different purpose.
Yeah.
Because now being a badass means what? Means comparison with others. Others telling you you're a badass. That's the only way you're going to be it. So that means that you have to go to the CrossFit Games and have the adulation of the crowd saying, "Oh, look at you." But that's not necessarily performance. That can be performance only in certain things and not others. So before you know it, this is where you're going. So my point is that based on your purpose, you will change the function of things regardless of where you are.
Yeah.
So if what you want is the look of people on you going, "You're amazing," that will not bring the same performance as I'm here to win the CrossFit Games.
Yeah.
The training, it's not even that the training will be different. It's that the way your body responds to training will be different.
Yeah.
Because the purpose is different. Therefore, the function changes. And you could train the same way. So that means that two people could train the same way if within limits. It's a thought experiment. It's not possible, but you get the idea. You get two twins training the same way with exact same base. Again, thought experiment. with different purposes will achieve different things.
Yes.
Even though they train the same way, they come from the same genetic background. Again, thought experiment is not possible in reality, but you get the idea. The purpose is different.
Yeah, I mean,
So therefore, the function is different. Therefore, even people that have the same training, the same genetic, will not end up with the same results.
yeah. I mean, and that kind of comes together with something that many people know from experience, is that your thoughts and the way you talk and speak and think about whatever it is that you're doing or yourself matters. You cannot...
It matters based on your purpose.
Yeah.
Because the problem is if your purpose differs from what the true purpose of what your action lead, right? Then you can say that's my purpose, but actually it is here. This is what you're going to achieve regardless of what you want. So that means that if the way to solve the environment that you create forces a purpose as well. So you have an idea of what you want, but in that environment, this is a purpose regardless of it. You have created a function to go that route. So you want to be this, you want to be that, but your partner, your job, your nutrition, your training, your friends or whatever creates that environment. This is where the purpose is leading you regardless of what you want.
Yeah.
And this is where the anthropomorphism of intent and purpose comes in, where people go, yeah, but I want that. That's not a purpose. That's where the human, you don't understand how a system works. You're trying to put a human quality into a system. That's anthropomorphism. A system, imagine if it was a computer. That's what systems are. Computers try to be systems. Except systems, especially life, is so much more advanced than any computer we have and maybe ever will have. But certainly more than now. Computers try to be systems. They are incredibly complex things. And they do what systems do. You wanting to change it means nothing compared to the system trying to solve its environment, because that is its purpose. So, nutrition, training, friends, partner, jobs, all of that create a purpose. You will not get away from that. So you can come to me and say, yeah, but I want this. Yes, but this is where you are.
Yeah.
I had that conversation with so many people.
Yeah, and
many clients. So for example, my client Amy, hi Amy, who's done so well losing over 50 pounds, right? In a way, it was very hard to do, but very simple at the same time. It's like, right, so you're in a state where you're working in a job you don't like, you don't necessarily like your life the way you is, but there's an entire thing there. So we changed that. Yes, you have to train. Yes, you have to control your food and everything, but that came after.
Yeah.
First is like, we're going to create an environment where you need to be smarter, sharper, leaner, and then the function follows.
Which puts so much more value in all the weight she lost, because it really showcases her willpower to change, improve herself.
Exactly. But that's why it took 2 years, by the way.
And
because in 2 years she went from 215 to 205.
Yeah.
She only lost 10 pounds. But then 2 or 3 years. But then a year after that, she lost 50 pounds.
Yeah.
But it took us 2 years to change the purpose.
I understand.
Truly.
Yeah.
Because she had to change her way of thinking, her life, not just the way of thinking, the life, like the entire environment. So it's the same thing. Like me, I started making progress really on the squat and everything when that day, when I decided to squat the 440, I was like, all right. Like the extra 100 pounds I put after that was because that day I committed to the squat, to the way Sam was coaching me. I'm like, all right, I'm doing this. Then I created an entire, and then I started to move because my purpose was clear. Yeah. Like I was going to squat heavy every week. My body's like, okay, what do we need to do? And then there was an entire thing there. So it's an overall. It's back to, you have to become the person, because your purpose has to be to squat 500.
Yeah.
Not just your want. Your need comes into play. Your purpose is to squat 500 pounds.
Yeah, I can understand that very well from my own experience.
But then how many things are required to get there?
So many things.
That's the problem with anxiety.
And it's you have to, everything that is not feeding what it is that you want, your purpose has to go in that sense, or has to change.
So let's talk about anxiety. You have crippling anxiety and everything. I'm like, all right, so now, if we change the purpose to lessen the anxiety, so let's go in the somatic, that means inflammation and stuff. So first of all, yes, your job, your partner, your friends, the life you're in, but that means also lowering the inflammation through training, through nutrition, because you want to stabilize the nutrition and then get into the acute intensity on the training and everything. Now, imagine how many things of your life now
Yeah.
have to be in order to become the purpose of you not being as anxious. And that's the problem, is most people, and there's the anthropomorphism, yeah, but I want that. So my mindset is going to change. It doesn't matter. You have not changed the purpose of the system. Until you change the purpose of the system, which means the way to solve the environment, nothing will change. And that's why you see people stuck in it 10 years later. They have not changed the environment.
Yeah.
Environment can be, yes, can be your partner, can be your job, can be your friends,
Family.
Can be your nutrition, can be your training. But no matter what, all that is going to have to come into play.
Yeah.
The way you talk to your partner, the way they talk to you, you solving those issues. Same thing with the family, same thing with the friends.
The way you talk to yourself, by the way.
The way you talk to yourself, the way you talk to the weights.
Yeah.
The way you talk to intensity.
Yeah.
All that is going to have to change in order for you to have created the environment that changes your purpose.
Yeah. It's the way you do one thing is the way you do everything type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to,
Purpose over function. So purpose creates function, regardless of the building blocks. That, to me, was the most aggressive idea of all this. Is like the building blocks almost don't matter. It's the body will. That's what we see with epigenetics, though, all the time. It doesn't matter what your genes are. Epigenetics will take you wherever it needs to go. Back to the flat worm. The genetic material didn't matter. It mattered in the sense of the worm is the worm. That's what the genetic material decides. How the worm is expressed, the changes within the worm, that's not genetic. That's epigenetic, and that's purpose.
And with that, I think with following, by the way, that purpose, that you have to also understand, accept a very thing that I found here in Brazil is that nature is bigger than you. Your body understands more than your brain does.
Yes.
And that's a very difficult thing to understand coming from the West, I feel like.
Maybe.
Because it's, yes, nature defines what you do. You don't have that much intake on what you do, really.
But it's not nature. It's each system within that is contained within another system. And
your
they
body
influence
knows.
on each other. Which is the principle of the free energy principle. Is your body is a system. So it fits within another system, but they both understand each other. And back to Markov blanket, they both communicate with each other. Your system influences outside influences your system. And at the end, that is what decides. So it seems evolution is much more based on a problem-solving system that it is out of a genetic random variation and a survival of the fittest. Because the system will change the genetic makeup as it wants to become more competitive, and that's what drives evolution. So it's purpose that drives function.
Yeah, so you can also see how this challenges religion a lot, because this challenges also the soul.
Yes,
right?
but you can see also how that challenges. Yeah, but you can, in what I said, I can put God in 17 different spaces.
That's true. That's true as well, yeah.
Because it's like we're going back to intent. Like life fights entropy. Okay, where is that intent? First of all, located. And where is it stored? Where is it changed? Who puts it there? Who decides where the intent? Who decided that you had to fight entropy? Life decided. In order to become life, he had to do that. That's why it took 2 billion years, because the system had to become that smart. Right, but what does that mean? And that's the problem. We don't know. That's anthropomorphism. No, it does not mean God. It just means we are not capable of understanding something of that complexity. Some people could argue that's what religion is for.
Yeah,
so that we understand what we do not understand. You know, like God moves in. Okay, that's where I would agree with religion. Is there are certain things the human brain will never fully understand, and that's okay.
I think also
that doesn't make God real.
I think what religion does do very well, it is actually a way of giving someone tools to go through life and understand things that you otherwise will not understand, and it gives a purpose, right?
This is where I will disagree with religion. It's trying to explain certain things we don't understand. I would disagree with that. You don't need to explain them because you don't know. All you can tell people is that you do not understand, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So this is where, to me, religion went wrong, is trying to explain certain things because people, as anxious as they are, were like, I need an answer, and they try to find one. This is where I think religion is wrong. Where I think science is wrong is that they refuse to keep an open mind if that open mind can lead to arguments given to the other side. It's not science, it's humans doing science. But it doesn't matter, when we say science, we mean the scientific realm, not the scientific process, right? Science was wrong and has done that time and time and time again, where it makes massive assumptions so as to not go into complexities they do not want to face. That's very human, for sure.
Wow.
And so that's what happens, for example, with evolution, with all that stuff, is we always refuse the idea of intent, purpose. And so there's many people like criticize Dennis Noble and everything, like go have fun. And Hawkins had an argument, like a conversation with him, which was very interesting. And Hawkins, you can tell, could not answer Dennis Noble because he's a biologist, but the guy was going at a specific ideas of system that very few people are qualified to do. You guys should Google Dennis Noble. He's amazing.
I mean, you can take this.
He's old now, but oh my god.
You can take this so many directions. It's
Right.
really
So,
really.
at first they tried to cancel him because he waited until he retired from his position to express those ideas, and he said it. If I said it before, I could not get any grant, and I had people to pay, so I waited. So once he said it, he got blasted left and right. He had a major conference where he explained his ideas. That was, I think, 2015. And since then, no one has commented on it. And that's science today. If you say something, everybody will blast you. And if you falter somewhere, they'll cancel you. If they're wrong, what they'll do is they'll stop talking on the subject. That's when you know you're right. So the unfairness of that system right now tells you like this is not scientific in nature. Because a lot of, for example, lactate, they say, well, you have to, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. I'm like, right, but the problem is that should apply to the original claim. That was extraordinary. For example, lactate is a waste product.
I was I was exactly gonna go there because that's exactly what's happening with lactate, right? The core ideas where it went wrong, and then from there.
So, but that assumption was made with no evidence that because yes, it was an assumption. We can keep it as an assumption. He declared it as a fact. Like now, it's considered a fact, a truth, and everything. So the problem was there was no extraordinary evidence to make such a claim because it was a massive assumption that corrected the field. And now the people that come after that suddenly have to give extraordinary evidence to change what was an assumption. How is that fair? And on top of it, if you're right, all they'll do is stop talking about it.
Yeah. I mean, this almost sounds like
you can never win. It's a fucking social media thing.
Yeah, no, but also, besides that, that's also a metaphor for having an imbalance, right? In your body. Like, once one part of the chain goes wrong, that's the new reality, and the rest of the chain reacts on top of that, and that's where you create an injury or bigger issues. Yes. But you can also direct it towards society where we are today, right? You can even argue that, for example, birth control changes the purpose of women.
Oh, 100%. They hate listening to it because suddenly it becomes a political issue where it isn't.
No,
it's just like we know that women on birth control look at life and men differently. It's just a fact. So after the argument is not you shouldn't be doing it because they go like, yes, but he does this, he does that. I'm like, yes, by the way, simplest way to make an evolution like a poor country get richer, birth control.
Yeah.
Because then women don't have as many kids, they can enter the workforce, things move forward. We know that.
Yeah, but I mean,
that doesn't change the fact that birth control changes women.
Yeah.
And changes the type of partner that it. So that's a fact.
And it can change an entire society. I mean,
it changes an entire society. Now, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm saying that's a fact. And that's the problem with science, especially right now, is you can't establish a fact and stop there.
Yeah.
So that's the thing with lactate. We go, but lactate is not a waste product. You're wrong. And then they start, and then you stop the proof, and then they stop the conversation and move to something else. So all that is human behavior, not science. So it's very hard to win in science today because the second you say something, they say extraordinary evidence, and they're going to start blasting so that you have evidence, but not enough. So they go, I don't want to listen. And they know you're right, but it doesn't matter. They shut off and then they move forward.
Yeah, and it's kind of striking that it turns out that way because you would think that people who work inside are so rationally based, but it sounds like such an emotional reaction that it's very striking.
There's a massive religious aspect to the scientific world, not to the scientific process. But
science is its own religion.
Yeah, especially medical science.
Yeah.
Medical science, once assumptions are made, It's written in stone in the Bible. You can't change it. It's very medical science in many ways is very much Old Testament type of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I understand it because it's a very
It's a very old thing.
but it's also a very uncomfortable thing to think because of so
It's
many
very
reasons.
complex, yeah. Anyway, so not to go into that rabbit hole because it's forever, but to go back to the original point, that means that when we say you have to become the person who squats 500, it's not a mindset. It goes all the way to a biological reality. It goes way more than that in a way. It goes to the way we are created.
Yes, I mean that phrase, like you have to become the person who.
Yeah.
I think it's so
everything.
powerful. I think that's one of the reasons why I fell in love with powerlifting. The day you
Yeah,
explained
because
that
it
to me.
changes you into a person
Yeah, and-
that you like being.
Yes.
Yes.
And it gives you control because it's not to say that whatever is on the bar defines who I am, but it does give you a stepping stone or like a reality to something to hold you accountable and also something to give you a red thread in chaos. You know what I mean?
But there's a deeper thing there. Powerlifting allows you to become the person you like being.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't even like powerlifting. I like what
That's
what
what I
it
mean.
represents. Yes, exactly.
Powerlifting creates an environment
Yeah,
that transforms you into the person you like being.
yeah,
So therefore, you like powerlifting,
Yes.
even though you don't like powerlifting.
Yeah.
But it was the same thing for sprinting.
yes, it is.
So that's the thing, is because you're an obsessive person, what you do becomes all that you do.
Yeah,
So then you create an entire environment which makes you successful at that thing. So the question is that thing creating the environment that will turn you into the person you want to be?
yeah,
That's why it matters so much. That's what the problem, I think, for example, we see with CrossFit is they're trying to be good at everything, which you cannot do.
yeah. Which creates
So-
anxiety, right?
Right, yeah, because you're asking different energy system, it's not going to work like that. Yes, there's a few that can do it, but for most people, you can't try to run really fast and then squat very heavy. Yes, some people can do it, but they're very, very, very rare. For most people, right, trying to get good at a 5K as you prepare for a powerlifting competition is going to get hard.
Yeah, and
It's gonna get really hard.
I think what I think with purpose is like for me, powerlifting it can showcase the Strongfit principles because people understand weights, they understand heavy. To me, it's important because I felt like in sprinting I couldn't represent that. There was not a strong enough why of purpose in sprinting for me.
Yeah.
It was only for my own glory. So
the purpose he created
yes was
did
so
not
fit who I wanted to be.
exactly.
So that's very interesting. That's very
Because
interesting. Sorry,
this is where humans, I think, also have. This is where free will,
yeah,
I believe, exists and everything. Is that but you through willpower, if you change the environment, you will become almost at a genetic level the person you want to become.
yeah.
So that brings the point that the superpowers are accessible. I was right the entire time. I'm just not there yet.
Yeah, no,
I'm
but
just not there yet. But
I mean,
superpowers can be accessed.
yeah,
I'm just saying. Like, I might not be able to do it. Although I still think before I die I have a shot. But it doesn't matter. The purpose is worthy. So we're going back to Nietzsche, right? The Superman. Man is just a rope across the abyss toward the Superman. Right? Maybe we can create the environment that,
yeah.
and then the problem-solving part of it leads to superpowers. I'm just saying.
And is there also a part that it's so important for people to do something that's outside of them to really push further? Like, for example, for me, I'm able to approach training with so much less anxiety because in my mind, I'm doing it to showcase strength that you can achieve through Strongfit.
Or,
No one forced me to do that. That's what I wanted.
yes, or your mind fits the purpose, which means you integrated your want into the system and
Yeah.
everybody's happy. I'm guessing it's the other way. It's more that way around. Is that you just, there's a purpose where the whole system goes forward and your mind is capable of extracting itself and putting it on the side. And I think that's where a lot of the issues are.
Yeah.
All you did was take your mind and put it back in the system.
Yeah.
So I think in that sense, a lot of the conflict comes in, is when your mind says, yeah, but I want to go left. Yes, but your environment, everything you created makes you go right.
Yeah.
Then there's a conflict.
Yeah.
And so people stay in the center where they go neither left or right. And then their mind goes neither left or right.
I mean,
which is why we see. You know?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think Burn the Question works so well because you
Or
can...
doesn't at all. Or some people cannot do it.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Because you have to go past your mind type of thing.
There's a question you cannot answer. To answer that question, there has to be a purpose strong enough to allow you to answer the question.
Oh, that's why it drives some people crazy.
Right. Well, if you had certain things in life, so what it means also is, and that's an idea that's been around, even religion or stuff like that, but very much like a Japanese almost system where to be really good at this it's a spear. Everything is that way, and you have to cut everything that is not leading you to the spear. So it's a clarity of purpose.
Yeah, I mean, and if you cannot change your environment, it is in a way your body would not let you go there, because imagine you have a horrible home environment, you cannot change that, right?
Yeah.
You cannot.
Then you have to leave.
Yeah, and some people don't want to.
By the way, it also shows you that pollution, nutrition,
yes, I mean
that it changes you at the genetic level then, because for sure it's a change in environment.
Yes.
So that means that we will see over time that nutrition, and I'm not even talking about the gut flora. We know that nutrition changes the gut flora, therefore the genetic makeup of the stomach. I'm saying the entire genetic makeup is changed through nutrition. We saw, like, for example, position of the teeth and everything, like my teeth being fucked up. That's a Western thing. We don't see that it's processed food and all that stuff.
Really?
Yeah, where the jaw gets, Mm-hmm.
That's nuts.
Yeah, they were talking about that a lot. Like you see perfect teeth in Africa, in places like, So that's a typical Western tooth thing I discovered. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. That's me not eating well as a kid. It's all that.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Even though in the West we all think we eat perfectly, that's not true. So nutrition will change you at a genetic level. That's pretty much, because about a massive environmental change.
I mean, nutrition is something that is it's so crazy that people don't take it as serious as they should, because it literally, you cannot do anything if your nutrition is not in a specific place. Like, your mind gets intoxicated.
I mean, people get...
Yes, I mean, it sounds very exaggerated, but I'm a dramatic person.
No. Your mind gets poisoned, and your mind gets poisoned, but it just took us 60 years to get there.
It's really
we
crazy.
Get poisoned very slowly over the last 60 years, and it changes behavior.
Yes.
We see it, by the way, we see it after the rabbit hole keeps going, because, for example, we know it's been tested that men have higher level of testosterone when they are around fertile women.
Yeah, well, that's something people don't want to talk about.
But if you think that doesn't change behavior or stuff, so but that means that a woman that is on birth control is not fertile.
Yeah, exactly.
That means men around women on birth control will have lower levels of testosterone.
Yeah.
So you change the entire society real fast.
That is so crazy.
Yeah.
That is so nuts. Yeah. To me, that's really nuts.
It also shows you how susceptible we are to the environment.
Yes.
Which is something, again, that I think was refused. And that's where genes are everything. Remember when we found the genetic genome, they all told us cancer will be solved in 15 years. Yeah, that was 40 years ago.
Yeah.
No, that was 20-something years ago, the genome. 25, 30, something. Anyway, none of the diseases that are genetic diseases has been solved by finding out the human genome. No. That is not how the thing works. Yeah. That was anthropomorphism. Anyway. So, and that's just to finish the podcast on that. This is why intensity. Because if you understand intensity, if you understand acute, you will create an environment, and the purpose created out of that is the way forward.
Yeah.
If we look at issues, chronic is not always, obviously, chronic is necessary as well. But the arch has tilted too much toward chronic. We need acute, we need intensity. And if you can create that environment, you will change the purpose into a beneficial way. The Strongfit system purpose is to create intensity, is to create an acute response, so that we change the purpose toward that. Mm-hmm. That's what the Strongfit system is about.
I find it so cool that you're so giving so much clear structure to the Strongfit principle, because it's going to be so much easier
for people
to understand, but also to keep people accountable. And I think that's equally important. People need people need to know when they're not doing something. Yes. I believe it's...
Yeah, but that's the martial art aspect.
Yes.
Like people need to be punished when they fuck up.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
That's martial arts. You make a mistake,
No.
jiu-jitsu, bang,
Yeah.
choked. Like this John Machado with me. Oh, you don't want to listen? Fine. Choke. It's like, oh, I get it. It's me playing Sekiro right now.
Yeah.
Sekiro is the shit, by the way. I'm starting to get good, but man, the first 10 hours, I got my ass kicked because I had to learn to play the game their way. It's very Japanese, very martial art idea. It's like, no, there's a style. You don't want to learn that style, go learn another style. But this is the style, and you're going to study the style until you're good at the style.
Yeah.
That's jiu-jitsu. And every time you make a mistake, you get punished.
Yeah.
Until you learn correctly, because otherwise you won't. Because it's a problem-solving mechanism.
Yeah. By the way, we don't like to promote stuff, but I do really wanted to say that I like the way the podcast you did with Jason Klippa. I thought he was really good at directing
I like
the conversation and the overall talk.
I don't know how you guys saw it, but this was one of
really,
my most enjoyable podcasts to do.
I thought he did it very, very. The two of them, his co-host and him.
Yeah.
I think
Gabe.
I think I don't know. I
saw his name. Sorry, Gabe, if I fuck up your name.
Yes, his name is Gabe. His name is Gabe.
Don't listen to me. I suck with names. So.
And now, if not, now your name is Gabe.
Yeah, exactly. That's your name.
Anyway, I thought they did such a good job in directing the conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, you've
been
on a very varied podcast and everything, and I thought they did a really, really good job. Like, if you guys want to listen to a podcast, I think it's very, very, very
the Jason
cool
Klippa podcast.
They do a really good job.
We never met with Jason. Like, we knew of each other, but never met. I mean, everybody knows Jason Klippa, right? But actually, like, he's a cool guy, and I think he's a good man.
Yes,
he
seems like he has some really good values and very.
I liked him a lot. And I thought that was a really good podcast. At least for me, it was one of the most fun podcasts.
Yeah, I thought
I just enjoyed doing it. Like that hour went super fast. I kept on talking. I enjoyed it personally.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the interaction with the two of them tremendously. So I would love to do it again because I enjoyed it so much.
Yeah, I mean, the two of them, Gabe and Jason, I think they gave it such good structure. They really, really did a good job.
Anyway, that's where we are for this week. We'll talk more next week, don't worry. Seminar 28th, 29th. It
became quite a long podcast, isn't it?
September 28th, 29th is LA, and most likely October 19th, 20th will be London.
Yeah.
Okay? Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.